It's D-U-E-U tell. I see you by this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah. D-U-E-U.
Welcome to Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show. I am Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. It is week 13 in the NFL, and we'll get to all the games on the week 13 schedule. But first, be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts. Twitter at FBall Game Plan. Instagram is one word, Football Game Plan, and on YouTube.com/Football Game Plan is the Football Game Plan Network. So we're here on Game Plus. Always enjoy our time breaking down the NFL. And this week we have some tremendous matchups on the schedule, some intriguing storylines as the playoff picture is starting to take shape. We saw a shakeup last weekend, and I think this weekend we're going to start to see who's real, who's fake, who's a contender, who's a pretender. Maybe not to that extreme, but we'll definitely get a clearer picture than what we saw coming out of last weekend for sure. Let's start with tonight's game with the Dallas Cowboys traveling to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Now, this is a big one for both teams. New Orleans is on a free-for-all down the standings. Ever since Jameis Winston got injured, this team hasn't been able to look right offensively. Trevor Siemian is not the guy. We may get Taysom Hill starting in this game tonight, and that's the right call. I think they should go with Ian Book, let the rookie play. Therefore, you don't take Taysom Hill out of his Taysom Hill role, and you allow him to still be that dual threat player, because we saw what Taysom Hill at quarterback looked like last year. It's just not efficient or effective enough to be a consistent player from under center all throughout the game. You kind of want him to be that, not a gadget guy, but red zone threat and also gadget guy. You don't want him to be the full-time quarterback. So I would probably go with Ian Book, but at least Trevor Siemian isn't the quarterback, which is going to be huge. Now for Dallas, they just have to get back on the winning track. We know their offense can score at will. We know their defense has athleticism and can take the ball away. Now, granted, they'll be getting back Amari Cooper, which is huge. They'll be getting back CeeDee Lamb, which is even better. And I think because they're getting back those pieces, we'll see their offense look a lot like the offense we've seen from them earlier in the season when they were humming. And because they're facing a Saints team that's not as dominant on offense or not as consistent or efficient on offense without Jameis Winston, that defense for the Saints will get tired trying to chase these fast receivers around, trying to make sure they stop Ezekiel Elliott. I think we'll see a breakout game in the Superdome tonight from the Dallas Cowboys. I like them to get the win. Next, let's take a look at the New York Giants as they take on the Miami Dolphins. Now, here's a unique thing about this game. For Miami, you have Tua Tagovailoa playing really well. If you look at his first 15 or so starts, they're very similar to that of the first 15 or so starts for Kyler Murray. We know Kyler Murray won that Rookie of the Year award that season. So Tua is playing solid, and we've seen this and said this all season long. As long as he can stay upright, they'll be just fine. His efficiency in the RPO game with the slants, and the ability to get the ball out quickly and accurately, his accuracy when you watch it in terms of where the ball is placed, unless maybe it's more so his ball placement, is phenomenal. So he is playing really well. We know about their defense, and they're facing a Giants offense that is sputtering at best. They got a win last week against Philadelphia, thanks in part to 3 Jalen Hurts interceptions and 2 drop passes at the end of the game by Jalen Reagor. So they're not playing well on offense. Daniel Jones is coming in possibly with a banged up neck. He may or may not start. So if he doesn't play, you're going to see Mike Glennon. Either way, if you're Miami, you got to like your chances, especially when both quarterbacks doesn't do a good job versus pressure. So I would expect to see the blitz and the heat turned up a lot in this ball game for the Dolphins and against the Giants. And because Miami has now played themselves perhaps into that playoff spot, and that's going to be a theme for this entire show, because we're going to be talking about teams, especially in the AFC. There's about 8 or 9 teams that's vying for that last playoff spot. and Miami is one of them with the way they've been winning as of late. They've beaten Baltimore. We saw them last week get a win, and I think they get a win this week against the Giants. I like the Dolphins to go ahead on and move on with another victory in the win column. Next, we get Indianapolis taking on Houston. And this is intriguing because coming off of a loss last week to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, watching the Colts play, I made the bold claim on CBS Sports HQ that the Colts will win the AFC South. To me, they're the most balanced team in that division. They can run the football. We know this with Jonathan Taylor. We know they have good options on the perimeter. Michael Pittman, T.Y. Hilton. Doolin got into the end zone last weekend. We know they have solid play at tight end. And Carson Wentz, to be honest, looked good throwing the football deep. Yeah, he left a couple of throws out there throughout the game. That'll happen. But to say he played up against Tom Brady and that Bucs defense, I thought he did fairly well. So I see them as the most complete team, to me, in the AFC South. What does that mean for this game against Houston? I think they can take control against the Texans. And you just watching the Texans play, you just wonder, man, had Tyrod Taylor been out there the whole season, how good this Texans team would have been. I think they would have probably been about 5-7, 4-7, 4-6, something like that. But they would have been a fly in the ointment type team, one that you just didn't chalk off as an easy win. Now, the Jets got the win last week, but I think this is a team that can be pesky. They can be, a nuisance, so much so that Indianapolis will have to play the entire game, in my opinion. So I do like the Colts to get the win. And because of that, again, they're going to move up that AFC South standing. I think ultimately we'll see the Colts go into the playoffs as a division winner. Let's move over to the NFC North. We have Minnesota traveling to Detroit. And Detroit does play hard for their coach. We saw them nearly put out a win on Thanksgiving against the Chicago Bears. But here's the thing. That's the difference. When you are a team that's not accustomed to winning, you don't know how to close out games and win close games. And that's what happened against the Bears. If they can tighten up loose ends, I know it's all cliche, but it's so true for football. There's not much you can say other than tighten up loose ends, make the plays that are there to be made, continue to get off the field on third down, and don't miss opportunities to turn the ball over. We saw them miss an opportunity in the end zone. Aruarie dropped the interception in the end zone from Andy Dalton. Maybe if he catches that interception, then that's 3 points off the board for the Bears, and maybe that's enough points for Detroit to win the game. So you see how everything kind of adds up. And when you're a young football team not accustomed to winning, those are the type of plays that you have to make. Minnesota, on the other hand, they dropped a head scratcher against San Francisco. Again, Kirk Cousins, as good as the stat sheet will show, actual practice in the game, you're like, man, what's going on? Why doesn't it register? Why can't you be consistent? They had the good special teams play, and Nwangwu had the fantastic kickoff return. But you miss opportunity. You throw an interception right to a defender standing right in your face. You also miss an opportunity to hit Justin Jefferson for a touchdown. It's just not good football, consistent football. But the stat line will look perfect. But in those incompletions and maybe the interception or fumble, those were crucial parts of the game. Here's another opportunity to put a team away that's struggling and to get out of the way with a win. But for whatever reason, we'll see them come out and play strong. So I'm not going to knock them too much. I do think Minnesota will get the win. And lastly, before we take a commercial break, we'll take a look at the Philadelphia Eagles traveling to MetLife once again. They were just out here last weekend to take on the New York Jets. I think it was just one of those days because Jalen Hurts, the one thing he has done really well all season is protect the football. So last week, to me, based off all the games he's played in, was the anomaly. We don't expect to see him turn the ball over like that, especially the one in the red zone. That was the most crucial one. So despite all of that, he still had his team driving with a chance to win. And I'm not going to beat up on Jalen Reagor. Things happen. Sometimes the moment gets too big, and sometimes, you just have drops, right? You get the yips a little bit. He's a good player. He'll rebound. And I'm more excited about this Eagles defense because we saw them shut down the Giants offense despite their offense giving up those 3 turnovers. So that's a good sign for Philadelphia. Their defense is not a flash in the pan. They're actually getting better as the season goes along. So that's key, and that's going to be huge in this game. They're facing a rookie quarterback in Zach Wilson, who got his first win last week. Kudos to Zach Wilson because he needed that, because if they didn't beat the Texans and he played terribly, all you would have heard was Mike White, Joe Flacco, Josh Johnson, Joe name every other quarterback but Zach Wilson. So I'm glad he got the win. That's a confidence booster for him and for this offense. So I expect them to try to build on that in this game, but they're running up against a very good Eagles defense now, the backstretch of the season. And I just think that the Philadelphia Eagles will rebound back in the place where they let one slip away against the Giants last week and get the win. So we'll take a quick commercial break and be back with more Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show here on the Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show. Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Let's jump right back into some NFL Week 13 previews, and we'll take a look at Arizona and Chicago. Now, this is a fascinating game because we may get the battle of backup quarterbacks again. But before I jump into the preview, this is a big reason why you have to have good QB2 play. I don't want to even call them backups because you have to get guys that can step in and start and hold a fort down. That's what Chicago has in Andy Dalton, and that's what Arizona have in a guy in Colt McCoy. Now, we may see Andy Dalton in this ball game over Justin Fields as he continues to nurse himself back to health. But if we see Justin Fields, even better for our entertainment value. But for Arizona, we may actually get Kyler Murray. So you may get Kyler Murray versus Andy Dalton as opposed to Colt McCoy versus Andy Dalton. But the point is, if it was two QB2s playing in this ball game, we'd still get a really good game. Now, Andy Dalton led those guys down to victory against the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving, but there's still stretches of play within Andy Dalton's game where he's fairly inconsistent. He's streaky. He goes hot and cold at this juncture in his career. When he was with the Bengals, he was a little bit more consistent, but as with age, as you see out there in Pittsburgh, it can be a nasty thing to try to get a handle on and talking about consistency. So the difference is they're not playing Detroit. If you give this football back to Colt McCoy in that Arizona Cardinals offense or Kyler Murray in that Arizona Cardinals offense coming off of a bye, that could be an issue. So I see this as a game where Andy Dalton is going to have to elevate his level of play. Now, the Cardinals have a fantastic defense. They can get after the quarterback. They have very good athleticism at the second level. And on the back end, they can turn the ball over, all of which sound like a problem for Chicago, which had issues against Detroit's defense last weekend on Thanksgiving. So to me, I think Arizona's defense will be the story here. Their offense will find enough points against this Bears defense. So I like the Cardinals to get the win and move on to continue to strengthen their lead in that NFC West. Now, like I said in the first segment, we're going to be talking a lot about playoffs and potential playoff matchups. This is one right here between the Chargers and the Bengals. There were a stretch of games where we wondered, remember when the Bengals beat the Ravens? Everyone was putting the Bengals in the Super Bowl, and then the Bengals lost to the Jets and lost a couple games. It's like the Bengals not serious. Then they come back and beat the brakes off of opponents, and now you're looking back at the Bengals like, wait a minute, this team can win. They blew out Pittsburgh, had a great game against the Steelers last weekend. This is a football team. When everything is clicking, they have pieces. They have the quarterback in place, 3 good wide receivers, a very good tight end, and a game breaker at running back, and their defense is active and aggressive at all 3 levels. Now you have the Chargers. The Chargers on paper have a lot of talent. We talked about Justin Herbert a lot throughout the season, how well he's played, but he hasn't played particularly well the last couple of games. Their defense struggling to stop the run. That's not what you want to hear when you're facing Joe Mixon and this Bengals offense. So the Chargers will have to find ways to stop the run if they want to be successful. I think this game will be an aerial attack. We'll see the Joe Burrow versus Justin Herbert game. And the reason why this is important, right now, the Bengals are still in the mix for the playoffs. They're in the playoffs right now. If the season started today, the Chargers are right there with the 7th seed. So if you look at things, these are the type of games where it's essentially a play-in game for the playoffs to help strengthen your cause, plus also win some tiebreakers. So if you're either squad, you want to get this win. And you don't want to fall behind in a very stacked AFC playoff picture right now with a bunch of teams vying for that 7th spot, which the Chargers now currently hold. But because they can't stop the run, because this Bengals offense is playing really well, and I think we'll see the Bengals be able to pressure Justin Herbert, I like Cincy to get the win and move on into the next week. Tampa Bay taking on Atlanta. Very huge game here. Again, I can't really make out what the Falcons are, but I know they're competitive. What a difference a Cordero Patterson makes out there in the backfield and what he's able to do. They make things look like a kickoff return for him, and he's having success in a run game, which gives Matt Ryan some time back there in the pocket off play action, and they're able to have some success. So we'll see how that affects this Bucs defense, which is very good versus the run. I thought they did a solid job against Jonathan Taylor last weekend, so they should do a solid job against Cordero Patterson. The passing game, Tom Brady came out flat against the Colts, and he can't come out flat against a young defense in Atlanta and give this defense confidence. If he gives them confidence, they could find themselves in a back and forth affair. Thank God for a guy like Leonard Fournette that was able to bail out the Bucs in that ball game, scoring 4 touchdowns. I think we'll see regular season Lenny, 7-Ward Lenny, in his ball game this week. The Bucs on paper, I say that a lot, but they actually play like they have the talent out there. I saw last week as a wake-up call for them, and I think they'll answer the call this game against Atlanta, get the win, avoid the letdown. Jacksonville takes on the Rams, and this is a must-win game for Los Angeles. You're starting to see Jacksonville take strides toward. Like I said on CBS, you gave Tyson Campbell, the rookie corner for the Jaguars, a game ball because he had a great interception on Matt Ryan, key pass breakup that got the football back for Jacksonville that gave them a chance to win that game. So this team is getting confidence, but the problem is their offense still is sputtering, and you're facing a defense that's looking to find a win, an offense that's trying to find a win. Right now, Matt Stafford is not playing like the first weeks of the season Matt Stafford. He's playing more like Detroit Matt Stafford. So you're going to see an aggressive defense. You're going to see an aggressive offense, and you're going to see a desperate offense. So with that being the backdrop, Jacksonville still young but taking strides in the right direction. I like the Rams to get the win here and knock out Jacksonville. Washington travels to Vegas to take on the Raiders, and the Washington football team find themselves in the playoffs. Right now, Washington, outstanding job by the football team. And they're playing a Raiders team that's very scrappy, and you just don't know which Raiders team you're going to get. I thought they had a chance to, beat Dallas in regulation. They let them come back, ended up beating them in overtime. So kudos to the Raiders for playing a physical game, but one to fight through adversity. This is a very entertaining matchup, a rematch of the Super Bowl back in '83. But I look at this one and I see a Washington defense getting confidence in the secondary, locking down wide receivers. They found ways to pressure the quarterback last weekend and turn the ball over against Seattle. They held Seattle. I know that's the Seahawks offense, but they held them to 15 points. That's huge. That gives them confidence coming into this ball game and how well they can play this Raiders offense. But I think the Raiders will try to pressure Washington's offense by forcing them to make plays in the passing game consistently, because Washington only scored 17. So I think the Raiders will try to make this a track meet, and that's when they'll win. I'm taking the Raiders to get the win here against Washington. We'll step aside one more time and take another break and be back with more Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show. Welcome back to Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show. Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. We having a great time here in Week 13 of the NFL season, and this game used to be the physical fight of the week that you always look forward to, because you had two great defenses, two aggressive defenses, two teams that really didn't like each other. But right now you're getting two teams that are kind of playing inconsistent, and but one is winning. One is right now the number one seed in the AFC, and that's the Baltimore Ravens as they take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Baltimore, I've never seen anything like this. Your quarterback threw 4 interceptions, but somehow, some way, Lamar Jackson was also the reason why they won the game, because of his running ability. But truth be told, their defense really kept the Browns in check. And because their defense looks like it's starting to hit its stride, that's huge for this football team. Lamar Jackson had his worst day passing that I've seen from him in his short career. But the defense had his back. He's bailed out his defense many times this season, but he didn't play well, and the defense was able to pick him up and have his back. On the Pittsburgh side of things, we're watching Ben Roethlisberger age like a banana out there on a football field. He has to be better in protecting the football, anticipating a little bit more. Yes, the offensive line and receivers have to help him out, but Big Ben is the veteran. He's supposed to get everybody lined up, get everybody in the right play, and make things happen out there on the field. Defensively, It's just not the Steelers defense that we're used to seeing. And I think they'll have an answer for Lamar Jackson. But with Devin Bush still working himself back from that ACL injury, just a year removed, it's not, they don't have their quote unquote Lamar Jackson stopper. Minka Fitzpatrick wasn't out there and playing consistent. Oh, he was out there, but he was playing very inconsistent. I just like Baltimore in this one. I think the Ravens get the win on the road against Pittsburgh and continue to widen that lead in the AFC North. San Francisco takes on Seattle. Huge game for both teams. To be honest, for Seattle, they need a win in the worst way possible. They didn't look good at all against Washington. It took them almost a quarter and a half to get another first down. So imagine that. This is a Seahawks offense led by one of the best quarterbacks in football in Russell Wilson. They couldn't get a first down against Washington's defense that was without Chase Young. So Seahawks need to find some type of success on offense. On defense, they're playing solid football, but I think against San Francisco, the 49ers will challenge their ability to stop the run. And yes, they do have really good options at wide receiver. And Ayuk and Samuel, I know he may not play because of the injury, but they still have Kittle. Juszczyk is another valuable option in the passing game. So they still have enough to where they could be dominant and have some success. And Jimmy Garoppolo is a much better quarterback, or maybe equal quarterback as Taylor Heineke right now. And you still have the Trey Lance element that could play a factor in this game. San Francisco is doing this while Seattle is doing that. This is a simple one for me. I like the 49ers to get the win. Denver travels to Kansas City, and this is another one of these games where playoff implications matter. The Broncos quietly are winning football games, and they're still in this AFC race. They're still in the playoff race with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. He got injured in that game last week, had to sit out a couple plays or a couple drives, came back in and picked up right where he left off. When he was in the game, he led scoring drives as opposed to when Drew Lock was in the game. So if he can stay upright and in the game, he gives Denver the best chance to win. But what I like about Kansas City here is that their defense is starting to play better. We're seeing them get pressure on the quarterback. We're seeing them be active versus the run. And we're seeing that secondary turn the ball over. So as their offense starts to get it into gear, their defense is already rising. This is something that has been a constant theme for Steve Spagnuolo and his defenses throughout his career. So I like what Kansas City is doing on that side of the football. This will be a very good, underrated game here between the Chiefs and the Broncos. I'm taking Kansas City to get the win here to knock out Denver. New England takes on Buffalo in our last game. This is a Monday Night Football game. The Bills were able to get right against New Orleans on Thanksgiving night, which is a huge gift for that Buffalo Bills football team, as the Saints were just pitiful on offense. And the Bills would turn the ball over. Bills were inconsistent, but the Saints offense couldn't do anything. And the Bills got enough swings at bat and were able to find the end zone. If they sputter against this Patriots defense, and with the way the Patriots offense has played efficient football, Mac Jones is playing efficient football, getting the ball out quickly to the right guy, which complements their run game, Buffalo could find themselves on the losing end of another game. So again, which Buffalo Bills team will show up? That's going to be the biggest key. That's the biggest question and the biggest concern. What I do like about Buffalo, they can pressure the quarterback as well. I do think their secondary, will be weakened a bit without their number one corner, Tre'Davious White. However, Dame Jackson can play ball himself. The second-year man out of Pitt, don't sleep on him. While he's not White, he's not a liability. And you're also facing a quarterback that doesn't push the football deep down the field. So this is a very good open field tackling team, one that will put pressure on Mac Jones. I think we'll see Mac Jones take a step back here and not be able to come through. So I like Buffalo to get the win. So that's all the games on the Week 13 schedule here in the NFL. And I want to thank you guys for joining us once again. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts, Twitter at FBallGamePlan, Instagram, all one word, Football Game Plan, YouTube.com/Football Game Plan. And keep it locked here on Game Plus Network, as there's a ton more of fantasy football betting content coming down the pike. Keep it locked here on the network, and we will see you guys in week number 14.
It's D-U-E-U till I see you. By this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it. You you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We bout to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah.